Hi again, I'm just going to read off this book, The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations by Dr. John Coleman, page 159. Well, this chapter is about musicians and entertainers and all that, politicians. The Reese Invisible Army is made of real professionals who know their job and are dedicated to the task they were commissioned to do. They are found today in the halls of justice, police, churches, school boards, sports bodies, newspapers, television studios, government advisory boards, town councils, state legislatures, and our legion in Washington. They work for every office, from county council to sheriff to judge, from school board to city council. Look at the office of the President of the United States of America. How this work was explained by John Rawlings Reese back in 1954. Their job is to apply the advanced techniques of psychological warfare as we know them to whole population groups that will grow ever larger, so that whole populations may be more easily controlled. In a world driven completely mad group of Tavistock psychologists linked to each other, capable of influencing the slow down here, I'm moving too fast here. Capable of influencing the political and government field, must be arbiters, the power cabal. Will this frank confession convince conspiracy skeptics? Well, guess what? No, because most people don't give a fuck. They just follow what the media tells them. Probably not, as it's doubtful whether such closed minds could have any real knowledge of these things. Such information is wasted on radio talking heads. Well, that doesn't surprise me. A director of the Reese Invisible Army was Ronald Nippert, whose specialty was tinkering with the minds of children. Now this gets interesting. I've not read this book in a while, but this is probably my second time. I've only read it once, so I did skip some chapters because I wanted to talk about. I think every chapter is relevant, but I just want to talk about the ones that are most important. Dr. Fred Emery was another Tavistock-linked psychologist who was on the board of President Johnson's Kerner Commission. Emery was what Tavistock called a social environmental turbulence specialist, the bottom line of which is that when a whole population group is subject to social crisis, it breaks down into synoptic idealism and finally fragments. That is to say, it just gives up trying to cope with the problem or problems. The word environmental has nothing to do with ecology issues. It has to do with particular environment into which the specialist has injected himself with a specific intent of making trouble, turbulences or stress patterns. This has already happened with rock and roll. You remember rock and roll, right? 50s, Elvis Presley, the Beatles. Drugs. There's lots of drugs these days, alright, more so than ever have been. Free love, abortion, which is abortion, sodomy. I won't read that out, but the L word, I don't want to get in trouble. Pornography, street gangs, a constant attack on family life. Let's just say, if I read that word, a particular word out, I'm gonna get in trouble because you just can't say it, can you? On the Institute of Marriage, on the social order, well, we've seen that breakdown of marriage. Constitution, obviously, why he's talking about America, this can apply to the rest of the world. And the Second and 10th Amendment. If this has happened, we find communities powerless to cope with broken down justice system, school boards, teacher evolution. I don't know why he's mentioned evolution. Mine is being encouraged to buy condoms, and yeah, even children being pushed. We've seen a lot of that, where parents are no longer. We've seen that happen a lot now these days. Parents not having the power to discipline their children, even if they just give them a little, I don't know, say a little slap, not like a slap's gonna bleed them. They can't discipline their own children. I mean, only the state can do it, not them, it seems. I'm not implying the state can hit them, but the state can take. It's better that the state take care of the children, not their own parents. Which is what's always. That's what they want to do, really. Usually meaning children should be allowed to obey their parents. A key issue in every socialist childcare program Members of the Reese Visible Army are entrenched in the House of the Senate, in the military, the police, and virtually every government office in the land. Let me just check. Actually, I want to check how much time I have. I wish my time was visible when I'm doing recording, because otherwise I just don't want to lose track of time. I think I might have to get an app to keep track of time. So I just have to check time. I've studied the state of California. I come to the conclusion that it's the largest contingent of invisible army shock troops in the country. I keep in mind this book, if I had to guess, I think he wrote it in the I think it came out in the 90s or 80s, probably 90s. So they're very close to a socialist police state. I believe Canada will be order for the rest of the nation. I differ when he uses those terms socialist. I would say what we have here is the merger of communism and fascism, and as David Lynch would say, it's synarchism or synarchy state or synarchist state. So, I mean, another term that I like, I wouldn't mind to be using is collectivism, because that's what communism, fascism, even democracy is. Collectivism, where you and I as individuals have no rights. When you look at collectivism, I suggest you watch G. Edward Griffin. Just YouTube him, you'll find him. At present, there are no laws on the books that make this type of conditioning illegal. Reese and Lewin researched the laws of England and the United States and concluded it was legal to condition a person without his or consent or knowledge. Well, they do that a lot. With a lot of things these days, not just a lot of politics. We need to change this. Polling is an integral part. Conditioning. Tavistock's invisible army of shock troops are changing the way America thinks about rock, premarital sex, drug taking, children born out of wedlock, promiscuity. Sorry, let me try these. I know I can say that word, but promiscuity, marriage, divorce, family life, abortion, homosexuality, and lesbianism. Yeah, they are said. I don't want to get. I hope. I mean, honestly, it's YouTube sensitive these days. So I said it, that word. I wasn't going to say it, but I'll say it. The Constitution, and yes, even murder, not to mention that lack of morals expiring as long as does one good a job. Well, yeah. In the early years of Tavistock, the leaderless group concept was used to lay the America we once knew in the dust. In charge of the project was W.R. Bion, who ran the Wharton School of Economics for years, where such nonsense as free trade and Keynesian economics are taught. Japan stayed with the American model taught by Jennifer MacArthur, not the Wharton School fraud, and look at Japan today. Don't blame the Japanese for their success. Blame Tavistock for destroying our economic system. But Japan's turn is coming. No nation will be spared in the final onslaught to usher in a one world government in a new world order. The brain trust in charge of Tavistock's war on America consists of Bernays, Lewin, Byron, Margaret Mead, Gregory, Baston, H.V. Dix, Lippert, Lesbitt, and Eric Trust. Where the visible shocks get their training? They got from Reese at Tavistock, where they found out across America sow seeds of environmental, social, turbulent stress patterns. They find it at every level of American society, obtaining posts in places where they could exert influence. They have been taught how to use by Reese. Decisions made by the members of the Invisible Army of Shock Troops have profoundly affected America at every level, and the worst is yet to come. Just to give a few examples of who some lead shocking troops were, let's mention George Shultz. He's been described as the kingmaker of George Bush Jr. He's a very hardcore Zionist who helped Bush Jr. come to power. The kingmaker, he was often known as. Alexander Haig, he was in the Reagan administration. Larry King, he's a talk show host. Phil Donahue, Admiral Berkeley, deeply involved in cover of Kennedy assassinations. Richard Armitage, another neocon. Billy Graham, Christian Zionist. William Paley, William Buckley, Pamela Harriman from the Harriman family. Henry Kissinger, George Bush, and the late Catherine Mayer Graham, not to mention the caravan that arrived in Washington from Arkansas in 1992, headed by Mr. and Mrs. Clinton, whose hands the nation was soon to be torn apart. Newcomers include Rush Limbaugh, Bill O'Reilly, Larry King, and Karl Rove. Business leaders in shock troop groups are legion, far too many to list here. Thousands of such invisible army shock troops of the business brigade were turned out at Tavistock's US facility, the last short training laboratory which began its existence on the huge New York State of Arable and Pamela Harriman. For those who don't know, Arable Harriman is one of the, he's not alive, but he was one of the premier members of Skull and Bones, and he was according to the late Anthony Sutton, a funder of the Democratic Party, and he's a Democrat supposedly, and on the opposite end was a guy by the name of Prescott Bush. Despite opposing it, and then you got George H.W. Bush, another Skull and Bones, and George Bush, another Skull and Bones. Basically, despite appearing to be in opposite parties of both Skull and Bones, the Harriman family and the Bush family, as we know now, Mrs. Harriman was the one who selected Clinton for special training, not in the Oval Office. Well, I didn't know that one, but that's interesting. Okay, let me check. So I gotta keep going back. Number 31, so I'm gonna wrap it up now. I think next time I read, I'm gonna try and download an app or do something in my settings so every time I read something the time is visible, otherwise I don't want to lose track of time. I'll read this final one. At the National Training Laboratory, corporate leaders were trained in stress situations and how to manage them. Companies who sent their top executives to NTC to receive for Tavistock training include Westinghouse, BF Goodrich, Alcoa, Halliburton, BP, Shell, Exxon Mobil, that's what it's called, not Mobil Exxon, but obviously this is old, this book. Eli Lilly, DuPont, the New York Stock Exchange, Archie Daniels, Midland, Shell Oil, Mobil Oil, Conoco, Nestle, AT&T, IBM, and Microsoft. Worse yet, the US government sent its top echelon personnel drawn from the US Navy, the US State Department, the Civil Service Commission, and the Air Force, who were tax dollars by the millions paid for their education. Tavistock gave these government programs at the Arden House on the Harriman estate. That concluded chapter 26, which I was reading from. So let me just recap. So I got a chance to, the chapter that I was reading from was how mediocre politicians, actors, are puffed. That's what I was reading from. So I will read this one, but next time. So yeah. I don't know if I'm going to do I don't know if I'm going to do decodes and do this at the same time, but I'm thinking of maybe just focus on this for the rest of the week. My aim isn't going to be to read the whole book, just try to read some chapters from this book, because it is a short book with a lot of good information on it. So see you guys soon.